Director Baz Luhrmann was on Long Island recently to bring the legend of the Great Gatsby home by holding a special screening of his latest film, The Great Gatsby, in Port Washington at the Soundview Cinemas right on Long Island's Gold Coast where the original novel was set. This special screening was organized by the Gold Coast International Film Festival and was by invitation only. Still, they packed 2 theaters full of attendees, and the turnout was very enthusiastic, many turning out in period costume. Luhrmann says he originally wanted to shoot The Great Gatsby on Long Island, but other films maxed out the New York State film production tax credit, so he moved his production to Sydney, Australia for budget reasons, but he and his team spent a lot of time researching the surviving Gold Coast era mansions in Nassau and Suffolk counties.
It would be 3 years ago that we first came out, actually, to this very location. How really supportive and kind the people have been here, and how many of the grand houses that we actually used to reproduce in Australia, almost identically. In fact, there's a very important scene in the film where we literally rebuilt exact replicas of pool location and parts of the building. But the main thing is that everyone has been so kind to my whole team over the 3-year period it took to get the movie made.
This movie is the 5th major film adaptation of F. Scott Fitzgerald's classic novel written in 1925. Luhrmann says it's a timeless story and it's open to interpretation and should be remade from time to time.
I think, like Hamlet, there's always room for the right interpretation in the right moment. I think Gatsby is the American Hamlet, and I think that should be done this year and in 10 years' time. And it's like the book. If you read it when you're 15 and you read it when you're 40, it's a different book. So it's there to be interpreted in many different ways, in many different times, and in many different places.
He's a superstar and the most charismatic and interesting man in his own right. Even if you didn't know he was a director, you'd want to lean in and hear what he has to say. I think the fact that every year we seem to grow exponentially, I think will convince people, especially sponsors. We need investors. We need people to invest in this area. And we need people to invest in the arts and in film. So if this kind of thing can persuade people that this is a good investment, let's pay attention to this area, then it's done its job, which is the foundation of what it really is. It's not just about the pixie dust. It's about the business.
Town of North Hempstead Supervisor John Kamen says it's great to have the director in town to talk about this film set on Long Island's historic Gold Coast.
It's very exciting. You know, it's a historical story in the sense that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote the story here. It's set in our community. He, of course, referred to it as the East Egg and the West Egg. We refer to them as Port Washington and Great Neck. But it really is an extraordinary setting with some type of historical accuracy that brings it home when we see this movie. It's very exciting, especially having the director here, Baz Luhrmann, telling us what it was like, what his inspiration was, giving us some insight into the film. It really is a very exciting day here in North Hempstead. Well, you know, we're referred to as the Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast references these larger-than-life houses where people live, these huge estates. We, of course, have turned them into catering halls and museums and the occasional residence, but it really is part of Americans' story. You know, this is the Gold Coast of Long Island. It's part of Americans' history, and so we drive by these houses. We're familiar with them. Unfortunately, there's not as many as once existed, but those that remain really are so important to us, and to see them come to life in a movie as part of the story of The Great Gatsby is very special.
Right before the screening, Luhrmann introduced the film and shared some of the inspiration he picked up from his research.
So we were here 2 years on and off, and people were so kind in research. And, you know, we went to all the houses, Oheka and Eagle's Nest and, Hampstead House. I mean, Hampstead House, in this film you'll see tonight, there's a shot where Gatsby, well, I won't tell you it's him. There's a man's hand like this, and you can see Nick Carraway's cottage. The photos are going to go up actually on the website, you can check this out, but I have photos from Hampstead House where it's my hand and my wife, Catherine Martin, the production designer, pretending to be Nick Carraway in the cottage. And I've reproduced that shot exactly. In fact, speaking of which, we were at the Vanderbilt mansion, and 6 months earlier I had found a photograph of a swimming pool. And I went, this is the perfect swimming pool that once existed for the staging of a very famous scene in the story. And we were out doing our scouts, and I saw a grassy knoll filled in swimming pool, and I went down, and it was that swimming pool. So I got my assistants to stage the scene. And when you see the film tonight, it's an identical replication of that swimming pool built in Sydney, Australia, with exactly the same staging. I'll put those up on the website too. So I just want to say that because so many things I think you'll see tonight and go, hang on, isn't that? And the answer is, yes it is. Just not here in Sydney, Australia. So we did take so much inspiration. We were so kindly looked after. I was just out on the carpet and I met a lovely young couple. I think the young lady was dressed as a flapper. I'm assuming that because there's lots of beads and shimmering stuff. And she said, thank you. Gatsby is back home. And I wanted to say thank you. Yes, Gatsby is back home here in Nassau County, and thank you for all of your help in doing that.
And immediately following the film screening, they held a Gatsby-themed after-party here at a real-life Gold Coast era mansion, Hempstead House at the Sands Point Preserve.
It's fantastic to have this party here this evening, knowing after all the research that was done to really recreate the authenticity of Hempstead House in the Great Gatsby movie is truly a masterful work of art. And we greatly applaud and are grateful to the director and the cast for making this story come to life the way they did. It really captured a lot of the imagination of what people dreamed about life was back in that day. And it was wild, it was wicked, it was careless, and yet it was really a lot of fun. And his team spent weeks and weeks going over this part of the building and another part of the building and another part of the property to really go back and then recreate what they did, making scenes and doing all that was done, I guess, out on a location in their studio. It was fabulous. They from the moldings to the windows to the stained glass, it was terrific.
I enjoyed the film a lot. I've always been a big fan of Baz Luhrmann's work, and I like the novel, and I think everything he does is very colorful and rich and entertaining, and once again he pulled it off. It's gorgeous. I mean, I wouldn't mind living in one of those mansions. They're absolutely stunning.
Even though it was filmed in Australia, the Great Gatsby, Baz Luhrmann did a great job with blending a lot of the old North Shore houses. There was a lot of inspiration from homes that I recognize. The Vanderbilt house in Centerport, they used the swimming pool, the staircase from La Selva. You saw Beacon Towers, influences from a lot of the great old Long Island houses. So I think he did a great job of portraying the real Long Island and the history of what it looked like. I thought it was a very good production. I thought they did a wonderful job of blending the original novel with the film to make a great, sort of hopefully a modern classic.
Chris Collora reporting, Long Island Online News.